All I'm saying is it's not all Oli's fault, but there's a percentage of it that's his fault. He's the manager. And we used to destroy Matheny when they were like a couple games above 500 for the sloppy baseball. And now they have terribly sloppy baseball, defensively, base running, and they're pushing, 20 games below? The team was never like this under any of these previous managers.
Nate still chirps Matheny.
Okay, that's my point, though. But, like, as bad, I say air quotes, as bad as things were under Matheny to the point that he got fired, they were never even close to this bad.
And even if it's not his fault, it's still worse than it's ever been here in the past, 15 years. And so something has to change. And I don't know how long his contract is, so I don't know if next year is already going to be a do-or-die year because it might be the last year of his contract. I have no idea.
He'll get another shot, and if things go south. And the problem is...
I think it's playoff or bust.
I think the front office knows that they gave him a roster that probably wasn't the most balanced, and things went awry early, and they didn't have the capacity to overcome those deficiencies, particularly in the starting rotation. And you could say, well, all right, the rotation, if you have a bad rotation to start, Miles Michaelis wasn't good early, Waino was hurt early, and then all of a sudden that impacts your bullpen, and then your bullpen's not good, and there's a trickle down. I do think, too, when you're down 5-0 every game, I think that takes a toll on the offense, too, because you're trying to do too much, and I think the whole thing spreads. I mean, there's a million different reasons why they were awful. The main one is they just weren't good. I get that. I just don't think you put all of it on Oli. I'm not saying you said that. A lot of it goes on the front office, too. But, I mean, John Mozeliak's been lately at least pretty upfront that he made a mistake with the rotation, and they're going to fix that.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how it goes if they do that. And then Oli has a team that should do better, and we'll see where it goes.
And in a sit-down with Martin, he did say, because Martin asked him specifically, well, what are your impressions of Oli this year? And he goes, well, he wasn't exactly given good players. I mean, he didn't say that word for word. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But he did take ownership of that. And regardless, I think whatever he does, Mo's going to inherit some of that responsibility anyway because he's Mo's guy. Mo keeps hiring guys who have these deep connections to the organization. And so the whole Cardinal way, I know people joke about that, but I mean, how does anything change? Like these are all the organizational philosophies when you have Oli Marmol and Mike Schilt and Mike Matheny, who all had deep connections within the organization before becoming the manager. It's the whole culture. And so I think there is part of it that regardless of who the manager is, the culture is kind of what leads it. And when it leads you to last place in the division this year, we're kind of looking at the top more so than we are looking at Oli.
You're on your game today, Cole.
Thank you.
You're on your game today.
Thank you.
What do you think of the game last night, Charlie?
Please.
Well, let me first just build off
Buttress
Cole's
my point.
Buttress, what a great word. I also think there's something to organizationally. I'm not saying this can't work, but they have basically said for the last three managers they don't value a guy who has big league experience. Has that worked? Now, I think you could make the case, look, Mike Matheny has a really good win percentage. You gave him World Series winning caliber teams. I think you can make the argument, okay, if you give those teams to somebody who has a history of managing a bullpen in tight situations in October, I mean, same with Oli. Look, I don't think Oli managed game one very well of the playoffs last year. That's a big deal. And when you're a first-time big league manager, you are going to make mistakes, and usually in the most stressful situations. I just think if you have a guy who's run a bullpen in the playoffs, I think Cole's word feel is a good word. There's a feel. Sometimes I think with the modern analytics, these managers play the games out. Like they go to bed at night and they think, I want my pitcher to go to this batter. And you could tell last year with Bryce Harper. They wanted Quintana to get to Bryce Harper no matter what. But they probably thought he's going to be at close to 90 pitches. Well, he was at, 74, 75, 76. I think Oli and the Cardinals played that game on paper in their head, and then they didn't actually watch as much what was happening that game, which was Jose Quintana was cruising. By pulling him, you were stressing every other pitcher in your bullpen to go beyond probably what they should have went, especially Helsley, who had walked off the mound in Pittsburgh with the thumb thing.
I just think I think that was a bad decision because Quintana was still pitching well. But it does happen. because I always think back to Tony, who actually is like a chess master with postseason bullpen moves. But he did bring in Lance Lynn, who was hurt at one time, and walked out to the mound and saw Lance Lynn there and said, Tony said, "What are you doing here?"
But that was a communication issue. He didn't mean to do that.
What are you saying? I can't hear you.
Wait, what?
So people don't remember, what did the bullpen
2011.
Gate? What did we call that? Bullpen?
2011 World
Gate.
Series.
Yeah, he brought Lance Lynn into the game with there was some communication. I think they threw the pitching coach under the bus.
Was it Zebchinski?
No, it was Lance Lynn.
No, I know. But
who they wanted?
They wanted someone else. It was a bullpen phone, if you believe. But Lance Lynn wasn't even supposed to pitch that game.
Lance Lynn was not physically ready to pitch, but they called him in there, and Tony walked out to the mound and said, "What are you doing here?" No, you called me into the game, and then he said, "What was his name? The last pitching coach."
Not Lilliquist?
Yeah, Lily.
Lilliquist?
He threw, and Tony kind of threw Lily under the bus. Lily said, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me." I think it was Lilliquist, right?
I can't remember the year.
No, maybe Lilliquist was out in the bullpen. I just remember his name came up, and he said, "Yeah, that wasn't me." Tony, I think, just said the wrong guy.
Lance is like, okay, I guess I'll go out there. That last point about Matheny, Shilton, Oli all being part of the Cardinal way, and that's a problem, is utter garbage. Go walk in traffic, Fat Tony. Ooh.
Well, it's a problem this season. I'm not saying it's always a problem. Clearly it's not, because the Cardinals have had an abundance of success. My overall point that I'm trying to make is, regardless of who your manager is, if you keep making decisions where you keep just promoting from within, and Oli, I believe, is a career Cardinal guy. I don't think he knows any other organization, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
But that's great for culture of any business.
Yes.
To promote, for a guy who's in single A to think he has a chance to be a big league manager,
Absolutely.
that's great for the – listen, I think the Cardinals have had a rough, obviously, 5 years or so when we're talking about falling off from their peak. But I do think promoting from within creates a good culture of everybody thinks that if they work hard, they can get to the big leagues.
Right. But my overall point is that the guy who is going to bear the brunt of it, for better or worse, are going to be the guys like ownership, the DeWitts, like John Mozeliak, because they create the overall culture. And promoting from within, you just kind of recycle the culture over and over again. And when it's successful, you get a ton of credit for it. When it's last place in the division, you get a ton of blame for it. That's my overall point, is that those guys are going to hold more responsibility than Oli Marmol, because I think this is
100%.
I think it's
an
fair.
overall culture.
To put it in context, like I remember when they hired Matheny, right? Terry Francona was the guy that a lot of people thought they were going to hire. What would Francona do with that team that Matheny inherited? Would he have taken them farther? Yeah, maybe, sure.
Get him in, by the way, 855-282-8255. Oh, yeah, Sanderson's losing his mind. I guess he didn't see the game last night, and he woke up to the news about Aaron Rodgers.
Can I just say, though, about the Francona thing? I mean, Francona, I don't want to say he was the first guy that did this, but and revolutionized is probably too strong of a word. But he's the guy that basically created Andrew Miller to become this super bullpen ace that wasn't a closer. And he would be very aggressive in big games to bring in who was his best reliever, Andrew Miller, even if it was the 6th or the 7th, to get you through a jam and then throw the next inning. So Andrew Miller, if you remember that run, he was ridiculous in 2016. He'd go out there and get 1 2/3 and strike out 4 dudes. I mean, he was probably the Indians at the time.
He could go he'd go give you 2
Best
1/3,
player.
middle of the game if need be.
So knowing that, I don't think that Terry Francona, for example, would bring in Seth Maness in the highest leverage situations of a World Series game.
Fat Tony chimes in and goes, follow up the last 3 managers and culture being a problem. A follow up the last 3 managers and culture being a problem. Number 1, Matheny was a player and then had no time as a coach with the organization. He was coaching Little League when he was hired. Schilt and Oli are very different. Oli is a managed by numbers, total analytics guy. Schilt was more balanced and had a bit of old school in him, Fat Tony.
And I don't suspect the organization wanted that. If they got rid of him and brought in an analytics guy.
You need a nice blend.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I 100% agree with. Because
A good wine, Charlie.
I mean, I majored in data analytics, so 100% I believe in that stuff. But you got to also just know when your guy is going. And the easy example that everyone points to is when Kevin Cash pulled Blake Snell out of the World Series in 2020 after 4 innings.
No feel.
That was like no feel.
Was it 4?
I think it was 4.
No, it was like 7, I thought. Either way.
7 innings?
When Blake Snell was cruising?
Yeah.
You think it was 4 innings?
I think so. Let me find out.
Either way. I think that's a good point because, I know Bernie likes to chirp. Ollie calls him iPad manager, which I think is kind of funny. But that is the whole idea of, look, you have to still watch the game. It's not just, you wouldn't even have a manager. If you want to do it by the book, you could literally have a computer in the dugout. And you could go say, oh, got to hit a lefty. Oh, numbers. There are the 52-48% coin flips where it does matter that the manager knows the room.
Yeah.
Right? Knows the confidence.
Yeah.
Knows the injuries.
Yeah.
Knows, okay, that guy's good numbers-wise, but that guy's hot and he's feeling it. I
get you on that.
Listen, I know that's kind of an old-school take, but, you can't just manage a game strictly based on percentages every single time.
Ironically, the biggest victim on the Cardinals this year, I think, of the change based on analytics and kind of the rules of the game. Now, the shift is outlawed. You have Dakota Hudson, who won 16 games as a pitch-to-contact guy. We teach our guys, pitch-to-contact, pitch-to-contact. And now it's swing and miss. You can't pitch to contact. What?
Yeah.
And there's Dakota Hudson, who's not a strikeout guy, who's a pitch-to-contact guy, who's had decent games. Last night was not one of them. But it does make me laugh because he's like the last remaining guy, and he was good for a stretch. Now, granted, the shift made it a kind of a different ball game, but now we got to swing and miss stuff.
So follow up, Charlie. Blake Snell, 5.1 innings, so in between, but 9 strikeouts, 1 earned, 73 pitches.
73 pitches. That was in the World Series, correct?
9 strikeouts, 1 earned. And that was elimination game, which they ended up losing and getting eliminated.
I always look at it like this, too. If you pull a pitcher, is the other team happy or sad about it? When you were watching that game, I know wasn't that the COVID year?
Yep.
Okay, so that was 2020.
That was when Justin Turner left the field and then came back for the post-game celebration.
With COVID?
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you remember that?
That was funny.
Yeah, that's right.
But, during that game, you could tell Snell is cruising, and not only that, the other team was happy when that move was made. If the Dodgers are cheering, dude, thank you. We couldn't touch this guy. I don't care who you bring in. I don't care if he's splits against me or crazy. We can't touch that guy. You're pulling him. Thank you.
That probably means it's a bad move.
Yes.
I agree.
That one, to be honest with you, that one I don't even think was close to 50-50. Everybody roasted him immediately for that. It wasn't even hindsight to see if they lost. It was immediate.
And he owned it in the postgame. They interviewed Kevin Cash, and he goes, I know people think it's crazy, but these are the analytics that we have followed all season long to get us to this point, so we're not going to change now. Which I kind of get that if you're in the World Series and you have a certain philosophy, but at the same time, don't you have any sort of sense of back against the wall desperation mode in you?
How about this for you, though?
The lack of balance, I don't love that.
Because you said you're a data – what's the exact major?
Yeah, what are you?
My major was data analytics.
So big data.
Yeah.
Most of the big data stuff is for large sample sizes, correct?
So I'm a big
so that's the thing.
Big proponent of sample size.
Right. So big data really helps you out over 162.
Yes.
Over 3 games, there's more margin for error.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that point, and I'm mad that I didn't think of it. That was great. Exactly. For one particular decision, you got to have a little bit of feel. For 162, absolutely. Go ahead.
Are you good at math?
I think.
You better be. If that was your major, yes.
What
are you doing in radio?
What's 365 times 49?
Is that how many days? No, you're only 39 years old. 365 times what?
49.
This is going to take way too long for
Okay, all right. So I'm just
So someone
asking.
I'll sit on it.
I thought he might be one of those guys.
I'll sit on it.
Like A Beautiful Mind?
Don't sit on it.
Are you Rain Man?
The environmental
Yeah,
Peckerwood said, Charlie, I think Bernie refers to Dusty Blake as the
iPad guy.
Coach iPad is Dusty Blake.
He calls Ollie iPad manager, doesn't he?
Maybe. I wouldn't doubt. He calls Taylor Motter their pet rock.
That's funny.
He was DFA'd 3 times by the Cardinals this year, which I thought would be a major league record, and apparently it's happened quite often. 3 times to be DFA'd by the same team.
What's the worst Cardinal managerial move in the last 25 years? Wombat has his.
Last 25 years.
What do you think it is?
Bringing in Waka.
So back to 98.
What do you think?
When Matheny brought in Waka.
The Waka thing, too, the thing that ticked me off the most about Waka is that he literally took you to the World Series the previous year, and then you didn't even try to see what you had throughout the entire postseason, and then you used him in the highest leverage situation possible when he hadn't been touched.
He hadn't, like as Mazalak said in the aftermath, it might have even been before that. People were like, when is Waka going to be used? When are you going to kind of ramp him back in? And I remember Mo, I can't remember if it was before or after, he said, yeah, we give the manager tools, and we expect him to use what's in the toolbox. Anyway, they brought in Waka, who hadn't pitched in weeks, as I recall, and everyone knew what was going to happen, right? And it did. Home run.
Ishikawa.
You lose.
And people forget, I think, Michael Wacha in 2013 was literally Oral Hershiser. Michael Wacha would go out there and almost throw a no-hitter. Almost every time he pitched. He took the team to the World Series in his... It wasn't even a full season. He just basically joined the team a year after being drafted out of college and frickin' took you to the World Series, and then you didn't even... I know he was a little banged up and all that, but you didn't even see what you had. That was what? NLCS game what?
They should have...
And he hadn't pitched yet.
Right. So, I mean, they had opportunities to give him a little taste and you got to ramp him back. You can't put him in the highest leverage situation at that moment when you had opportunities to get him in there. Do you remember the two words that always accompanied Waka before a start?
Of course.
Coming in?
Downward plane.
Downward plane. And
He was the only pitcher in baseball that was tall. He was the only pitcher that threw down.
It was, to me, downward plane was sort of the soft contact of back then. You always heard that. And because he threw from up here, and he's like a 6'6" guy. But then he did hurt his shoulder, to be honest. And then he had to come from over here instead of straight over the top. And you know what he didn't have anymore? Downward plane. But then he healed, and guess what he has now? Downward plane. He's good again.
But all these pitchers get hurt. I mean, all their shoulders. It doesn't matter really how you throw.
He had that weird thing, though, that they thought might be ongoing. That's kind of why the Cardinals gave up. I can't remember what it was called, but they thought it might be like just a structural abnormality with it and that it would keep coming up. But obviously he's fine because he's good again.
But I do think there's something to his usage where I think teams try to throw him like 150 innings a year. And they really try to curb his innings. We'll look it up here, but I'm pretty sure that he doesn't throw a lot of innings in a lot of these seasons.
That's not what Wombat was talking about, though. What else do you think he's talking about?
Worst managerial decision?
Yeah.
In the last 25 years.
2013.
Oh, so he's talking about managerial?
Yeah.
Just probably either Manus or pitching to Big Papi?
There it is.
Yeah.
When he was hitting like 3,000.
It actually would have been statistically better to just walk him every single at bat.
Yeah. That was
I think his
his
slug was over 1,000.
He was crushing everything.
Look up his numbers. It's one of those things where when you look it up, you think it was good until you look up the numbers, and it's even better than what you thought it was.
Yep. Let's see here.
Michael Wacha, by the way, has not thrown. So he threw 165 innings with the Cardinals in 2017. Since then, he's never thrown more than 127. So he's still a dang good pitcher, but they throw him out there for 5 innings at a time.
When analytics have more weight than gut feeling, the sport is not as watchable. Can you imagine, Cam, if analytics started to take precedence in the NHL? How would that even work in hockey? Thank God it won't happen. What the hell are you talking about, dude? It does.
I'm sure it has.
Dude, analytics started creeping in when I was playing, and it didn't look too good for me. You know what I mean? It just started happening.
Well, you mean to tell me that as your career went on, fighting started to become a little bit less important?
It had nothing to do with that. It was more like, being... You get caught out there against Datsuk, and he just owns you for 2 minutes in the zone. You turn the puck over because he back checks against you, and just stuff like that. Then I wouldn't get a lot of shots on goal, so I would always kind of be in a defense. Oh, God. Bad analytics.
One of the criticisms of baseball is it's become a 3-outcome sport. And part of that is analytics-driven with launch angle and driving the ball to the outfield. And, bunts are something that you rarely see that people hate because analytically you never give away an out. But it does take away from the ability to manufacture runs in old school baseball. Now, I'm all for home runs and everything, but there's a lot of games where you better strike when you can and push one across. And I think that type of baseball, we don't see that often anymore.
Are you ready for Big Papi?
Yeah.
I thought it was about 700, but I wasn't sure. But it is. He batted in that World Series. Okay, so he was 11 for 16 with 7 runs, 2 doubles, 2 homers, 6 RBI, 8 walks, only 1 strikeout. Batted .688 with a .760 on base and almost a .1200 slug.
Good God.
Well, that .760 on base, that's where you attack them because, you need better than that.
You want to hit Randy up and do a live read and go to break? So
That's
we're
a
organized
great
today, baby.
plan.
All right, Randy, what's up? What's on your mind?
Hey, how you guys doing there? Hey, I saw that Cusimano is now a golf caddy or something.
Yes, he
his
is.
job or something.
He lost his job, yes.
He could do it all.
Who's going to take? Is Charlie Marlowe going to take his place now?
Probably.
I heard he's up on that.
On TV or radio?
No, on the
Both?
radio. On the radio side. You taking over the 10 o'clock slot?
Yeah.
That is a good time slot.
That's a good time slot.
That's actually a good time slot
It's a
for
pretty
my
dang
for my
good-
life. But
Pretty dang
no,
good time slot.
The Charlie Marlowe YouTube hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, one more question there. Based on this, this coach getting fired in Michigan, now does that mean that
State.
if someone comes on your show and accuses you of some, say, salacious sexual assault or context or whatever, would that mean you're fired automatically or you're suspended and based on what someone allegedly said that you did or contacted or whatever? I mean, in other words, if someone calls your show and they say something to you and you take it like she takes it as, oh, he tried to, I don't know, consensual, some kind of consensual thing, does it mean you're already going to be suspended? Based on what someone
I
says
I think there's a different set of circumstances at play here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, now
I think it's a
my
bad
arm the other day.
comparison.
and Mel Tucker also admitted to it, and even if it wasn't criminal what he did, it still broke his morality clause in his
Yeah.
contract, which is going to give Michigan State a great excuse to get out of that.
Yeah.
You think so?
I understand. So you think these moral clauses put in there to prevent paying out these coaches, or why didn't you give them all this money then? Well, what's the sense of giving all this money if they're going to fire them anyway for any alleged,
Well, it doesn't happen to everybody.
Because they got
He's
high
probably
on
a
their
really
own
good
supply after one big game. Then they gave him the contract. The next game, they lost 56-7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, good show. And by the way, who would be the backup caddy to Charlie Marlowe in case he was a big
well, you can.
That's
That's it.
backup caddy.
But
Having a caddy does help you. It certainly does.
I'll give you the caddy. I
doesn't make you
I like
swing
taking
better.
walks.
I have a question though.
That'd be cool to do as a young
So
kid, for sure.
About Mel Tucker?
I don't know obviously exactly what happened, but do you think these morality causes, for example?
I don't know what they are. I just heard the term.
Okay, but we know there's something in there. I don't know the exact language. No one's saying that infidelity is good, but do you think a coach should be fired? And I understand that this potentially goes beyond that. I'm also reading the fact that they were on the phone 27 times. And to me, you don't have 27 phone conversations as adults with a married man for no reason. Am I wrong?
I agree with you. But
I don't know exactly what happened.
That's the whole thing. We don't really know the story. I agree with you.
Is she like a therapist, though?
Well, she is a sexual assault survivor who's now a person who goes. She's paid like $10,000 per trip usually to go speak to sports teams to advocate basically to how to treat women and whatnot with these athletes.
Was she flirting back with him?
We don't know.
But my point is, I don't know. I just don't think if there are truly 27 phone calls, that is more than because she was on campus 3 times, right? 2 times to speak.
Yeah.
Once she was the honorary captain for the spring game. All I'm saying is you don't have 27 calls late at night with a married man. That just doesn't happen.
I agree.
And so my question was more so, no one is saying, and whatever he did, if it was phone sex or whatever, but even if it was a full-on affair, do you think a football coach, basketball coach, whatever, should they be fired for infidelity? We all know it's not good, it's not moral, it's not criminal, but do you think a coach should be fired for infidelity?
See, the clause, it's a fair point, but those clauses are put in there to protect TV stations, athletic programs from having any of the the stench of a situation reflect on them, and maybe like
especially Michigan State
in college football, if it could impact donors. I mean, that's really what it's all about. So those things are in there. And if you also have like a coach who's bad, it also gives you a way to get them out too. If you want to make a move but don't want to pay them the money, those things are put in there for plausible deniability or to give you room to make a move. I mean, so it's not really a question of legality or not. It's what's in the text of whatever the clause in the contract is, so you can remove yourself from whatever the situation is that could reflect bad on your program, your station, whatever.
And this, according to MLive.com, Tucker's contract states that if the coach engages in any conduct which constitutes moral turpitude, or which, in the university's reasonable judgment, would tend to bring public disrespect, contempt, or ridicule upon the university. Which
That's pretty broad.
That is pretty vague, I will admit. But
and it's intentionally vague. But I mean, the truth is, if this guy says I didn't do anything wrong, he can challenge that, and then they go to court to see if it was a wrongful termination. But I agree. If you're married, you're not on the phone 27 times. Now, maybe there are, like, different circumstances. Maybe she was going through a tough time, and she looked at him as a father. I don't know. I just think it has a bad look to it, so I agree with you on that. It's a bad look. But we don't know all the details yet.
right.